Welcome to Who's Right. Today our guest is Sheila Harsdorf, the senator from the 10th district here in Wisconsin. And Sheila, hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yes.
And what a beautiful day it is.
I know. Aren't we lucky to be out here on the Capitol lawn? We're so happy. I know that you have been in the legislative for quite a while, and I know that before you started in the legislative, you were a businesswoman.
Yes, I'm actually a dairy farmer, and I farmed full-time before I ran for office.
That's incredible. I really want to know about how you were an advocate for the farming issues and how you started out really working for the farming industry before you went into office. What are some of the things that you did?
Well, I was an active farmer, a dairy farmer, milked about, at that time we milked about 85 cows, and I farmed in partnership with my dad and my brother. And farming was something I always wanted to do from the time I was a little girl. And so it's a great way of life. I learned a lot of important values and lessons in life. And I also learned from my folks the importance of being involved. And during the time I was farming, my brother was in the legislature, and it was when he decided to not run for re-election that he encouraged me to consider running for office, which I eventually did. And so I served in the state assembly for 10 years.
That's right, you served in the state assembly for 10 years. And when you were in the assembly, what were you doing? What were some of the committees that you were on?
I was involved with committees involving higher education, agriculture, natural resources, and those issues are really important in my life, important in, I believe it for the district, and enjoyed getting very involved in those issues.
Right, those are key issues for you, and they still are, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So after you served in the assembly, then you decided to run you took a couple years off, I think. Yeah.
I did. I actually went back farming because my plan was to go back to the farm, which I did, with no intentions of running again, but then 2 years later I was encouraged to run for the state senate.
Right, and I understand that you ran against an incumbent that had been in 8 years.
Exactly.
And you won.
We did.
Which was quite a coup. I mean, that's amazing that you were able to upset that incumbent and win. And then when you got into the state senate, you decided to get back into the committees that really pertain to what you did, what you do well. And what are some of those committees that you're now serving on?
Well, right now I'm on the higher education committee and as well as the agriculture committee. I'm also on the joint finance committee, which this is the third time that I've served on the finance committee, which is the budget writing committee, considered the most important committee because any appropriation bill comes through that committee.
Right. And in that committee, what have you been able to do as a legislature?
Well, obviously the key issue was dealing with the budget. And as you know, that we've gone through a very challenging budget.
When you went through that budget, did you realize how controversial it was going to be as you were going through it?
Well, we are in a challenging economy. We are in an economic crisis, and we know that people have been asking us, voters have been asking us to get our fiscal house in order. And that's what this budget is all about, is not pushing off the tough decisions, but working to get our fiscal house in order, balancing the budget in an honest way, not raiding funds and not raising taxes, and doing what's right for the taxpayers of our state.
Right, and when you went through the budget and it was passed, well, even before it was passed, when the Democrats just took off and left you stranded so that you couldn't do any legislative work, how did you feel about that?
These are tough decisions, and we know that that's what we're elected to make. And like I said, for too long we've been putting off the tough decisions. We've been taking money from different funds. Last session, taxes were raised over $4 billion, and we lost about 160,000 jobs. And so we know that this is about getting our economy, getting our budget in balance, and creating an environment where we can create jobs. We know in order to turn our economy around, we must put people back to work. And that means we have to create an environment where businesses want to come here and where they want to expand. And I'm hearing, I talked to a business owner the other day who said, why am I staying here doing business in Wisconsin? He said, my taxes keep going up, regulations keep going up, and we know in order for us to position ourselves as a state, we must create an environment where businesses want to come here and want to expand here. And that is absolutely essential.
So your position was, when the legislature was shut down and the Democrats would not come back to work, your position was basically, I believe that I'm doing the right thing and I'm just going to hold here and sit and wait till I can get the legislation passed.
Well, I have served in the minority and the majority, and I believe that when you're elected to show up and do your job and to vote. And if you don't agree with the majority, then you vote no. And I've done that. I did it last session when I was in the minority. I opposed the tax increases. I opposed the changes in the, that they passed. And so, I think that's a part of our job.
Right, and you weren't going to give up.
Absolutely not. Being in office is about standing up for what you believe is right.
Okay.
And it's about taking the tough votes. And you don't please everyone.
Right.
But there's a lot at stake here, and this is about getting our budget balance. For the first time since, I think, about 14 years, we have eliminated the structural deficit. That wasn't easy. It was a lot of tough decisions. But this is about turning our economy around, growing our economy, so that we aren't dealing with ongoing budget shortfalls.
Yeah, it sure is. So, did you experience any harassment from your district or outside of your district? Where was the harassment coming from, if you felt any?
Well, obviously, people are very polarized. People have strong feelings on both sides of the issue. And we've seen the protests down here. We've seen protests in the district, and people are very passionate.
Mm-hmm. At any time did you feel threatened during this?
There have been times, yes.
Mm-hmm. But you just stood strong, and you probably have protection.
Well, it is something that obviously the security was very tight at times at the Capitol, and it is something that you think about and you think about.
You're concerned about.
Right.
Yeah. Can you tell us about your district? What is it like, and what about the people in the district, and just explain to us what's going on in your district with the recall.
Okay. Well, I represent the 10th Senate District, which lies along the west central side of Wisconsin, right next actually to the Twin Cities. So part of my district is basically a suburb of the Twin Cities metropolitan area. I also have rural areas, and so it's a wonderful district. We have tourism in the northern part, and so it covers all our parts of Pierce County, St. Croix, Polk, Burnett, and Dunn.
Okay. And do you think that any of the recall is coming from inside the district, or is it coming from outside of the district?
Well, this recall effort has been from the very beginning driven by outside special interests. And while of course there's people in the district supporting it, they spent more money in the 10th Senate District trying to get the signatures in the first 30 days than they did in any other Senate district.
Unbelievable.
And all but I think $50 a contribution. They spent about $67,000, and I think they had one $50 contribution come from the district. So there has been outside special interests organizing and bringing dollars in from the very beginning to drive this recall effort.
Amazing. That's terrible. I'm really sorry to hear that. You've got those forces against you. So what can be done to help you overcome the obstacles that you've got facing you with this recall?
Well, there continues to be a lot of dollars coming in. One group just put in $500,000 for staffing in the race. Another group spent just about $200,000 on a Twin Cities TV buy, which is unheard of because it's a very expensive market. Mm-hmm. And dollars, I know another union has set aside $10 million for the various recalls. So we know that we are going to be outspent. The opposition, the special interests are very well funded and they're very well organized. Mm-hmm. We're receiving strong support from the district, but we know that we are up against a very powerful special interest group. And so we are working hard to get our message out and we have a strong base of support. But we know that dollars are going to come from all over the state and outside of the state to try and beat us. And so, you know, whatever help we can get in western Wisconsin, this race is essential. This race is essential to what direction Wisconsin is going to go. Are we going to control spending, control taxes, grow our economy through creating more jobs, or are we going to stifle our kids and our grandkids with more debt, more spending, and more taxes? There's a lot at stake here.
Right. You really need your supporters all over the state. So you need supporters from Republicans and independents and anyone that hears your message from all over the state to send money and help you raise funds to continue this fight against the recall.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so if people want to get involved in my campaign, support us financially, they can go to standwithsheila.com, and that will direct them to my website. And if they want to learn more about my opponent, which has been, she's been a long-time union activist, they can go to moretaxes.com. More, that's M-O-O-R-E taxes.com, to learn more about my opponent. She's been a very vocal activist. She would take our state in I think, the totally wrong direction. It would be more spending, more taxes, and we simply cannot afford. We can't afford, and we don't want those special interests controlling the legislative agenda.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a
pleasure to be with you today.
Likewise.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Who's Right Today, the show where your opinion counts. Go to www.whosright.org and tell us how you feel, and we'll see you soon.